right, to elongating that conversation into our next panel. Dan Frankel, the editor extraordinaire of the relatively new brand within the Future PLC family called Next TV. If you don't subscribe, get the email newsletter, go to the website. You're doing yourself a disservice by not, because if you want to keep up with this stuff, it's probably the best nexus of information you're going to find in this fast colliding world of television and video and streaming and all that stuff. But the discussion on purpose has been titled "The Medium Formerly Known as, quote unquote, Television." We said streaming TV, that's the name of the week of stuff, but it's probably not an apt description. And I think what we're trying to do with this next conversation is kind of hear from folks who have been in companies and in situations that kind of maybe started even their careers or their business lines as sort of television entities, but have progressively figured out and moved on from that sort of linear only notion of television into some things that are much more modern and streaming and all of it. And I think we've assembled a nice collection of folks from various places around that sort of, let's call it, don't call it, television ecosystem. And I now leave the conversation in the capable hands of Dan Frankel from Next TV. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, panelists. I appreciate it.
You're kind to call me capable, Tim. I appreciate it.
Hey, I got no other choice, Dan.
That's true. I understand we have a hard stop at 3:15 p.m. Eastern time. Somebody else sent to use the channel, so I'll move it along. I'd like to cover kind of a broad array of background here today, but I thought we'd kind of go around the horn in no particular order and do the introductions in interview style. We'll start with Adam Ware, who works for Sinclair Broadcasting Group. He's the general manager of STIR, and probably a few other titles, Adam, that I'm missing. Tell us about the role and tell us what's new with STIR. How many active users do you have right now?
We have a lot of active users,
but
I don't give out the exact number. STIR is doing terrific. Launched in January of 2019, so we are a year and a half old, a little bit more. 5.5 million downloads since the launch, 3 million since the start of COVID in March. Session times are in the 50-minute range or so. 121 channels, of which one of them is called the STIR City channel, and there are 77 versions of that. So do the math real quick. We're just under 200 channels nationally. I think the greatest test for us really has been what happened since that initial big COVID-19 push that we got in terms of downloads. We sort of knew we'd lose some of that, as everybody, I imagine, thought about the same thing. And right now we're 300% up in terms of audience versus the month right before COVID started. So things are doing quite well.
So your users are primarily mobile, or is it kind of all devices at this point?
So it's interesting because the name of our panel is The Medium Formerly Known as Television. And for me, I would add, but looks a lot like television, because 80% of our downloads are from connected TV devices. I guess the one thing that has remained constant through all of this change over the last whatever period of time is the couch, right? There has been a whole lot of technological advancements in the couch, which means people still like to sit down, lean back, and watch what's on, and not necessarily do a whole lot of work to go find it. It's a time for being informed. It's a time for having escape, whatever it is. And so STIR, I always sort of frame it as STIR is a television service. It's a television service, if anything, that is our local TV station's television service. The way we sort of frame it internally is that there are streaming wars going on out there, and we know about the national streaming wars. but no one ever really talks about the local streaming wars. And the local streaming wars is actually where streaming kind of started in the first place, because it started with baseball, which was an inherently a local driven streaming experience. People are fans of a team. It's tribal in nature, and people wanted to be able to stream the game if it was from out of market or whatever, connecting to that local experience. News during COVID obviously has played an even greater role, but local news has been also just the consistent driver. And so what Stir attempts to do is we attempt to really leverage off of the television station's brand in the marketplace, to offer viewers a local streaming experience. There's plenty of national ones. Our mission is to be a local streaming service.
We'll get to more. Let me just go around the horn. Carol Hinnant, who she's Chief Revenue Officer of ComScore, whose job is to measure all this stuff. Carol, how's that going?
It's going. So I'm telling you, with all of the proliferation of streaming services, we're challenged on a daily basis just to keep up with more and more offerings coming into the marketplace. So I think that's a good thing for ComScore, because we're busy, and I think it's a good thing for our partners like Stir and Sinclair Broadcasting as we go in. And I think what Adam says is really true. I think, I guess the notion of baseball kind of helping to invent streaming is interesting, but I definitely think that we're in a game of Moneyball now, trying to figure out, who's going to survive with all of these options that are out there. And certainly everyone has benefited from COVID with just more and more viewing hours occurring. But the top 5 streamers seem to be increasing, kind of on pace with some of the newcomers, and then you're kind of in a fight for eyeballs on that long tail.
There does seem to be an urgency to kind of make this a business now. I think you touched on it. Okay, I will move on to, I can't see her on my grid, Yasmin Wickham, who is the Senior Director of Digital Platforms for Katz Networks. Did she make it in, Tim?
She's here.
I sure did, Dan.
You are good. Good. Hello.
Hi. Yes, introduction. My name is Yasmin. I handle digital platform management for Katz Networks brands. That's among them are Core TV Mystery, Bounce, and the Brown Sugar SVOD.
And most of the viewing is still coming through broadcast linear, or what's the distribution like these days?
It's quite interesting. Yes, most of the viewing is still coming through linear, but Roku does come as a close runner-up.
Good. Thank you for that. I'm going to also introduce Rick Haskins, who's in charge of SVOD service CW Seed, or I guess it's a advertising supported service. What's it like over there, Rick? How's Seed going?
Seed is going really well for us, thank you. For a long time, we relied really a lot on CW to drive the traffic for CW Seed. And basically what Seed is it's binge programming for millennials. But lately, and I think COVID has a lot had to do with this, is that it's really coming into its own, where we don't need to rely on CW as much, and it really is becoming its own channel. Collectively, we have over 70 million app downloads between CW and Seed. And that just keeps growing, as does CW as well.
So where does the majority of programming come from at this point? Is it archival CW programming? Is it from all over the place, or?
Sure. We look at it as 2 ways. CW itself, we look up as catch-up programming. And what that is, it's the last 5 shows that people watched on linear TV, and they can catch up on those 5 and get ready for the next 5. For CW Seed, it is 2 things. One of it is we create our own original programming that mirrors what we're doing on CW. For instance, we do have a lot of superhero shows on CW, and we have a lot of superhero animation that we create that we can bounce back and the audience back and forth. And then we also have a lot of acquisitions which target our sweet spot of that millennial. We just acquired the old episodes of 90210, which was on CW, as well as some other shows, Limitless, which was on CBS. And we've got a couple of other things that we're about to announce. But all told, we have over 1,000 hours of product on CW.
And you're getting a lot of support from the broadcast side, a lot of interstitials promoting the Seed brand, or what's that like?
Well, it is actually fisticuff on that because they want to promote their own shows. So we do go in, and it really is on a priority basis. What we as an overall company is the priority is what we'll push on both platforms. But yeah, we certainly appreciate the love that they can give us.
I recall working at a different type of media company, a print media company called Variety. And 10 years ago, before they ate their legs, they and reinvented themselves. They talked about my group as the web monkeys, which is to say digital wasn't a very ingratiated part of the company. And covering the TV business at the time too, it seemed like it was kind of that way too. I wonder what the general working environment is with folks. Most of you are digital folks working for companies rooted in linear. How integrated is the process these days? Real broad question, but I thought I'd throw it out there and get us started with it.
I'll go first.
Sure.
Having been in both the traditional TV world and the new TV world, our company was launched by broadcasters, and so there's no doubt that any station group 10 years ago probably wasn't thinking all that hard about digital, and then started to move that way with their news. Their networks definitely weren't thinking about streaming. There was no TV Everywhere apps 10 years ago and things like that. But the stations recognized an opportunity to move their news brand online. And so that started with websites and then started with their own apps. And so the move to OTT has just been a natural sort of extension of that. And in many ways, they've already been selling local OTT inventory for a good period of time. So as marketers in the local market talking to marketing partners, they'll go in and sell an entire package across multiple platforms around the various different unique content experiences they have, as well as some other unique ones, which I'll talk about later. But though I do think there has been, I do think there is a continual sort of issue between, well, is it Nielsen or is it Google Analytics, and which metrics are the right ones, and how do we reconcile the two? But how do we make it easy for someone to bring in all this data and figure out exactly what they bought and did they do well, and so on. So I think those issues still remain. They're getting better, but those issues still remain.
And for us, I think our biggest challenge is how do you move from being a network-centric company to a multi-platform company? And I think a lot of people, it's been a challenge. It still is a challenge, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really up to the viewer. We've always believed that we need to provide the viewer what they want, where they want, and how they want it. And they're really the ones that have kind of told us that we need to be in the digital business, and just as important, how we need to be in the digital business. And I think that we are slowly getting there, but Adam, I can feel some of your growing pains because we experience them every day as well.
How much, in terms of the content engine that you guys kind of share, how much of it is driven by the needs of digital platforms these days, the different consumption habits and just maybe different audience? How much a say do you guys have at this point? Again, across the process.
I'll tell you, when we buy product now, we look at it, how it will do on linear, how it will do on digital as well. And then we'll actually drill down to the platforms as well. A lot of our shows, Riverdale as an example, is a younger skewing show. 50% of their audience is on mobile. So we absolutely take that into the equation of what will work on. The more platforms it works on, the more predisposed we are to acquire something.
Right. Are there a lot of conflicts at this point?
There's always conflicts.
Yeah.
I like to see it as discussion points. So yes, there are a lot of discussion points.
Discussion point's a good way to frame it.
Right?
It seems like, for the most part, most of you involved in launching ad-supported streaming services. I think the acronym is FAST. That's what one of our analysts uses a lot.
Yep.
And it seemed like there's a lot of those about right now. It's, as competitive or maybe more competitive than starting a subscription brand. Is that true? What's the experience?
I think it's different, right? So, I mean, I'm also involved in Tennis Channels over the top service, which is a subscription service. So by no means is it reaching hundreds of millions of people, right? That's not the business model. The business model is being able to offer hardcore fans the ability to watch more, and they'll pay a premium for that. So I think that end of the subscription spectrum makes a lot of sense as you service hardcore fans, and probably don't even call them subscribers, but call them members more than anything else. And when you start thinking about your subscribers as members, that then opens up the door to a lot of different things that you could be doing with them, besides just being in the selling them video experiences, particularly around sports or other kinds of things. There are a lot of different elements around that. And so that's something on subscription and we're working on. On the ad-supported side, there is no doubt that if your content is not unique, you are in trouble. And what has happened in the course of really 2 years is it was a bit of the wild, wild west. Everybody was sort of getting into the business in some form and having trouble selling those ads. In many cases, companies like Sinclair would come along and arbitrage the inventory from various partners and platforms, and we would sell it for them on a local basis because our salespeople are quite experienced in selling television, and their inventory is TV inventory. And so Sinclair, other broadcasters have been really at the forefront of leading the ad-supported TV business and the streaming business by bringing packages on a local basis. But I do think that if you're going to now compete against companies that either have a broadcast network or a big cable network at the front of the tail, the dog in the tail at the front of this, you now have Hulu, ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, right? Well, free subscription versions of it. That's one vertical company now. You have Fox, even though they sold everything except their broadcast network and their sports and the news, they now have Fox and Tubi. So they now have that vertical developing. Paramount Plus, I guess, is the name, right? So that is completely vertically integrated between the broadcast network at the front or marquee cable networks going on down to Pluto. And now you see Peacock doing the same thing. And then you have HBO Max, right? Where it's taking a lead cable network brand, so either a big broadcast brand or a big cable network brand at the front of it and driving it through. All of a sudden, a wild, wild west of offerings has consolidated up pretty quickly. And if you're going to try to compete with that, forget all the different experiences, small subscriptions, large subscriptions, whatever it is, ad-supported, hybrids, whatever. What's your content? And that, I think, is the greatest challenge anybody has. We have a solution for that, but I think that's the greatest challenge.
I think, Dan, I would add to that, just kind of from a measurement perspective, content has always been king. And so good content, consumers are going to find it, no matter how hard you have to look or how challenged you have to be to get to some of the offerings today, which I think personally I'm challenged by, trying to move from one platform or app to the next on a connected TV through a wired service. It can be challenging when you're trying to find all of that. So I think that as challenging it is for the consumers, it's also challenging for the brands, and having that proper measurement that can be distilled within an agency, kind of in the same way that they're used to looking at linear television or digital, is really important. And so I would say that kind of bringing it back on all this verticalization that's happening in the industry right now, it's, you know, the same thing with that happened with linear television in the consolidation of trying to amass the brand so that you could be a group. I think everything that's happening in the industry today, you can look back and see it happened 20 years ago. So, you know, we talked in our some of our prep about is television the dinosaur? And I don't think so, because, you know, I can look at Rick and Adam and say, we've been here for a long time playing in this game, and it just keeps changing and evolving to what the consumers want and the technology that comes in. And I think measurement is the key, and you have to have a monetization strategy. So while all of these AVOD services have launched, it's like, what's that monetization, and how can you find it, and how can you measure it, and make sure you're getting the audiences that you think you can.
And Carol, you made a good point about how you guys have been in this business for a while, and you've seen this
like the wrinkles to show.
Reemergence, reworking of what TV used to be. But you know, Adam mentioned that, you know, content is important, and you said content is king as well. But I really believe that there is something to be said for the user experience and engaging your consumers. I love an underdog story. So, you know, when I see a small AVOD or an SVOD service that is really doing it well, it can't just be content. You know, I mean, there's a way to repackage things and, you know, use your social media to, you know, actually get people involved. And, you know, that's, you know, measurement becomes a really big thing there, you know, because if you're small and you're working with a minimal team, you want to make sure that the time invested in, you know, trying to build your consumer base is actually well invested time.
It seems like in addition to sort of establishing new brands, you're trying to kind of build brands that in some ways have a lot of explaining. I mean, I look at Kate's, and it's a linear brand to some extent, but it's a linear brand on digital channels that maybe not everybody's familiar with. So that's an added challenge. And Yasmin, I'll direct this to you, in a really crowded marketplace with a lot of different technologies and a lot of different ways to distribute video, you're distributed in a number of different ways. Describe the marketing challenge of building your brand, I guess.
So I would definitely say it's trying to pick your distribution strategy. You know, obviously, the more places that you're at, the more coverage you have and the more eyeballs you have. But you, again, only have a limited amount of resources or a limited amount of time. You know, do you decide to go with Roku first, or do you, you know, say, okay, we're going to switch and try and stream on Peacock? For us, that's a really big challenge. Like, you know, which distribution platform is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck? Or again, you know, time invested is a big thing for me. So, sorry.
No, I was just going to add to what you were saying, which is, I think, I mean, we are also in some similar businesses. We have, I guess they're called D2s or multicast or whatever you want to call them, where you put an antenna in the back of your TV and you get to watch free TV channels, which is a, you know, pretty decent concept that's been around forever. What I think it's really understanding the platform you're on. More importantly, it's really about the input that they're using. I've never really framed this as streaming versus this versus that. I've framed it as HDMI 1 versus HDMI 2, or it's built into the set, whatever. And in that world, you then have to understand really who your competition is. So if you are getting delivered to a TV set, generally speaking, through an over-the-air antenna, you're competing against maybe 20 channels. right? Of which in that world, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, CW, a couple of the local independent channels, for instance, are the dominant channels, right? They're dominant in the other world as well, but they're really dominant in that world. And so the way we sort of look at it is, if you go back to the early days of cable, what were the basic food groups that needed to exist for someone to sort of feel like they wanted more than 4 channels or 5 networks? You know, I remember when Fox became officially a 4th network in the eyes of Nielsen, because I was there at the time. And that was a big deal, but where were the other channels? So you needed a 24-hour news channel. You needed a 24-hour sports channel. You needed specialty channels. And I think that's the way it's gone with the D2s, whether it's Yasmin's company or it's Sinclair, et cetera. It's about offering easily, maybe that you never heard the brand, but you know the content, right? So that when you're channel flipping, you go past ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and you go a little higher, or within that band, you get to the D2s, all of a sudden you see a show you remember, right? And then you stop and you'll check it out. And as long as you're consistent with the scheduling of that, so that the next time they show up, it's the same show or something like it, the brand then develops out of that. And that's your interstitials, that's your promos, et cetera. But again, in that case, content really is the driver of it. Content is king in that. If you're doing streaming, it's a completely different world, right? In that world, it's about making it easy, because the consumer has said quite clearly that there's a lot of apps and they don't know how to quite navigate through it all. And when they get there, they don't want to spend a lot of time going through various different parts to get to the content they thought they were going to get when they downloaded it. We did some focus groups back in right before COVID, actually, in February. Magid had conducted focus groups for us. And it showed 2 things really clearly to us was, you know, get them to what they wanted quickly. Do not try to over feature it. Make it as simple as possible and get into the content that you promoted for them to download it in the first place and check it out, or get them to an experience really as fast as possible and make it consistent across the board. And then in our case particularly, we were sort of hoping that local would stand out. You know, that was our thesis. And sure enough, it did, right? And what became quite clear to us there was lean into local and lean into local hard and lean into it faster. And so that came out of the experience for us.
I want to switch gears a little bit here. You know, we've done a lot of coverage at Next TV on not just the avid competition between services, but platforms right now. Google's making a big push with Android TV. You've got Roku, Amazon, Apple. TiVo's trying to make a play. You got a lot of companies that can sort of invest on a loss leader basis and in some sense play hardball with content companies. Are your companies rubbing up against that right now, or negotiations for distribution in the OTT sphere getting harder to do? What's happening there?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Rick.
For us, I can speak to that. I think that we have created a very unique niche for some of the platforms that you're spoken to. On the ad VOD service, people know that we consistently deliver a unique audience to them. So again, it goes back to the content that we're seeing a trend here in today's discussion, but they know that we have a content that targets an 18 to 34, 18 to 49-year-old audience that is good for the services that we are trying to get on. So again, it goes back to content, and it is niche content that particular platform wants and needs. And I think that if you can deliver that on a trade basis, and ultimately the consumer to that particular platform, you're going to be fine. The other thing I want to say on the whole thing about is TV a dinosaur? I think that if Darwin here today, he would say that TV is survival of the fittest. Will long-term go, it's very quick on its feet, it's nimble, it sees trends, and it moves on those trends. So I don't think anyone has to worry about TV as a dinosaur. I think we just need to keep our eyes and ears open to continue to move in a direction that we are going to be the survivors and we are going to be the fittest.
Well, I mean, the concept of watching video is, you know, outside of a movie theater. I mean, that's TV, right? No matter what we do it or how we do it, it'll always be here.
Right. And who would have thought 6 months ago the TV was going to overtake movies in a weird way because of COVID?
Sure.
So
Kind of related to the platform question I just had, is it tough to measure audience and sell advertising in an environment where the platform operators have so much control? What's the interaction like there? Another broad one, but maybe one of you guys can take it.
So we obviously we have Core TV, the linear stream, and then we have Core TV on Roku, and we're putting it out on a couple of other platforms. So part of the issue becomes how do you put all of the measurement together? Like what becomes your key metrics that you want to measure by, so that you can actually decide whether or not the advertising placement is going to benefit your advertiser or not. It doesn't make sense to try and sell a package that where you can't deliver an agreed upon metric, whether that be sessions or time spent viewing. But I mean, before you even get to that, you have to figure out what does that look like. When your metrics from Google Analytics are sessions and page views for your websites, and then when you go over to Roku, if you're using the universal measurement in Google Analytics, then what's the equivalent there? So somebody has to kind of sit down and figure out what all of that is, and then a decision needs to be made company-wide, how you want to go about selling that.
I think that's absolutely right. In terms of measurement, it's really finding the common metrics that you can rally around, both for contents and ads. So if you're having internal discussions about, as a programmer, what are the consistent metrics we're going to measure our success by, think about how challenging it is for a brand or an agency to do that when the metrics are coming in. So I think that from selfishly, from a measurement company's point of view, independent third-party measurement is key. And we do need to work to make sure that all of the platforms allow the granular level of measurement that's needed. So it's not enough just to measure at a top line, especially if you're trying to understand the engagement of an audience from a brand perspective. You want to get down to genre level and programming level detail like you're used to in television. But I think taking a look at a lens of premium video versus everything else is kind of where the marketplace needs to go, with some cross-platform tools.
Yeah, I mean, I just that I do think the common currency issue has always been an issue, and then I think believing what the research is telling you is the second issue, and now it's sort of heightened because you have a lot of different platforms providing information to content distributors. I could see data coming in from one connected TV platform, and I could see data coming in from another connected TV platform. And I'm not going to say what their names are, but I'll tell you that according to one platform, people will watch for hours and hours and hours our service. And as much as I like to believe that someone's sitting in front of a set watching for 4 hours, watching Stir, I know that's not possible. And where I'll see another end where I'll see very low usage. So I think in this case, these are all sort of like growing pains in a rapidly exploding fast channel universe, or an OTT universe, whatever you want to call it, that needs to get solved and will get solved because everyone has the same stake in it. But that said, if it was just about data, then you wouldn't be selling, right? You wouldn't be marketing partners. You would just sort of be doing trading, and it could be done by computers all day long. And clearly there's part of that that exists in the market, but ultimately this is about taking brands that have campaigns and marketing goals and trying to figure out a way to connect them to the audience around content experiences. In other words, selling. And that's about people, and that's about new concepts, of which the currency has to play a role in, but doesn't necessarily drive it. And I don't want to go too far, but I give you one example. Everything we do is local. I've said that already, but we look at other things, content experiences and advertising experiences local. We have a channel that just launched that is from an auction house that auctions horses and livestock. And they do a lot of stuff on Facebook Live, and they do a lot of stuff through streaming, and never really thought how they could do TV necessarily, other than promoting an auction, come down to the auction person. So we've launched a channel with them. It's a 24/7 channel. It's called the Horse Shopping Channel. And this weekend, it's a 24/7. This weekend on Saturday and Sunday will be 6 hours a day of a live auction, kind of like the Mecca car auction, but for horses. And we actually think that's an interesting model where advertisers who are interested in short form and long form marketing opportunities are going to start moving in that direction. The ability to have, if an advertiser feels that they would like their own channel, for instance, well, what does that mean exactly? How can we help build a channel for somebody? How can we help define what the metrics are for that? Is it only about how many people you reached, or is it about some other success ROI? That's all happening because you have, I believe this, TV people now getting into the streaming business and the OTT business, talking to advertisers that have been looking for solutions for a long time. And that's really exciting because it's now opening up the space even broader. So it's not just not a dinosaur, it's now becoming really a robust, gigantic sort of driver of OTT.
We only have about 5 more minutes of time, and again, we have a hard stop, but I want to see if we can get this in before we get out of here. Again, you have these sort of large, increasingly powerful platforms like Roku that are less and less neutral, that have their own advertising businesses and data collection goals. And I guess the question is, faced with these ever more powerful entities that you have to sort of partner with to get distribution, what chance do content companies have? I mean, it seems like the pressure is to be disaggregated, have, they count your data, they sell your advertising, they take your content. That's what they want to do. Is the game changing in that regard? How do you push back?
So, we have a pretty long history of negotiating distribution agreements as a company. In the case of connected TV platforms, they clearly want content. And it goes back to sort of what I first said, which is content is king. So in our basis, we believe they really want local news, not just local news. They want the local news from the local TV station with the anchors that people recognize and have invested in years and years and years. They want local sports, et cetera. And they're all, it's not dissimilar to MVPD conversations as well, where they sell advertising as well. And I think what we've found is that there's a lot of ways to work together on that. So we've had a good relationship with Roku. I imagine we'll have really good relationships with others in this space. There are things you have to do to separate, who's going to, maybe you could have category exclusivity around certain types of advertisers and things like that. But ultimately, I think we respect their platform because they do an amazing job of evolving and investing in their platform, et cetera. And I'm not just saying Roku, but all of them. And I think the platforms respect the content that you bring to the table. Anybody
else want to weigh into that?
I can just say to me, we got a great relationship, and the reason why is because we can deliver something that they can't deliver themselves. And that is we provide a piece of content that a lot of times is already been established by millions of dollars in the marketplace that they can then go and take and put it platform. So I think as long as we provide a meaningful service or good, we're going to be just fine.
In the last minute, what is, this is a positive, so I'm hoping somebody can answer this. In terms of the technology giants that control distribution, which one do you think is easiest to deal with right now? Somebody-
Pass.
Come on, go out the limb.
Short answer. I'm gonna go Roku.
Yeah. Still
I
neutral?
Still neutral? No, I mean, Roku's really doing a good job of trying to get people on the services, and their support is very stellar. I mean, all I want is, when I send you an email, I just want an email response back. That's all.
I think we're going to have to, Yasmin, I appreciate it. We're going to have to leave it there because we've really got to get out within 30 seconds. This has been terrific. Dan, thank you. I'm sorry to give you the bumps rush, but we've got technical. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
I appreciate it very much. Take care, everybody. We'll see you for the rest of the week. Please come back. Bye-bye. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Disconnect.